What's up guys, my name is Ivan Valdovinos, and on this channel I provide tips, tricks, advice, and strategies for your graduate school applications. So if you are new here, consider subscribing. In today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about letters of recommendation, how to go about asking for them, and how you should prepare your 3 to 5 letters of recommendation for grad schools, fellowships, scholarships. When you are applying for graduate school in particular, they are going to ask you for a minimum of 3 letters of recommendations. So I want you to be best prepared for this part of the process. So the first tip that I have for you, and it's probably the most obvious, but it's building relationships early. And this means that once you are on campus, once you are a freshman, even if you're like a sophomore in college, I want you to go to your professor's office hours and start getting to know them. Start getting to know their research, start getting to know them on a personal level, start getting to know their work, start discussing some of the topics in the classes you're taking with the professors. But I want you to attend these office hours at least twice per semester or twice per quarter. And do that every quarter, every semester until you are ready to apply for graduate school. And the reason why is because you want to make sure that this letter of rec writer, in this case this faculty, this professor, to be able to write a detailed account of what you have accomplished, who you are, what are your goals, and how prepared you are for graduate school. So the more times that you visit with this faculty member, the more detailed their letter of recommendation is going to be. You don't want them to send off a generic letter of rec, because that's not going to help you in terms of getting into graduate school. You could also ask former employers or supervisors for your internships or your research. Those are really good people to also ask for letters of recommendation. And again, you want to make sure that they are able to write a detailed account of what you have accomplished within that role and what are the initiatives you have led, or if you ever held like a leadership position within your internship or research or whatever it is. You want the letter of rec writer to be able to write a detailed account of what you have accomplished, because it's gonna show the graduate school committee more than just a generic letter of recommendation. Again, these people should be able to provide examples of your work, your aptitude, your accomplishments, and your character. Those are going to be the strongest letters, and the only way to get them is by you knowing this person for a long time, whether it's them being a mentor to you, them supervising you, or even if you took a class with a professor but you met with that professor outside in office hours or in other academic locations. So you want to make sure that you are building these long-lasting relationships with these faculty, these employers, these supervisors. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is how and when to ask for a letter of recommendation. So the first thing I already alluded to in the previous tip, but office hours are a great way to go ask for a letter of recommendation. So if you're going to be asking a faculty member or maybe a research advisor for a letter of recommendation, you want to go attend their office hours. You want to make that face-to-face contact if you can. Obviously, if you can't, then you want to do like a Zoom call, and you want to kind of explain, here's why I want to go to graduate school, here are the schools that I'm applying to, here are my research interests, here are my goals, here are my career goals, and you want to share that information with this person via a face-to-face conversation, like a formal meeting or a Zoom meeting, for example. And then when you're in that meeting, what you want to ask them after you have shared that information, you want to ask them, can you write me a strong letter of recommendation? And the reason why I want you to include the word strong in there is because if they're only going to be able to provide you with the generic letter of recommendation, I suggest that you pull out of that conversation and find someone new to send a letter of recommendation. You want a strong letter of recommendation, which includes examples of how you've done in the classes, how have you performed in your roles, and so you want to make sure that this person's going to be able to write a strong letter, because it's going to put forth a better application for you, a better say in your aptitude, your character, your work experience, and your achievement. The committee is going to be able to learn more about you if there are concrete examples of what you have done with that experience with that letter of rec writer. And then once the letter of rec writer has agreed to write you a letter, you want to follow up with an email. And I'm going to get to another tip of what to include in that email in the next couple of tips. The next tip that I want to provide is that you should be shaping your letter. So a lot of the time we think that we're asking this person to write us a letter of recommendation, that they should know what to include because you provided this list of information. But honestly, the best letters of recommendation come when you both work together to write it. So what I want you to do is when you are either meeting with them or when you send a detailed email, I want you to include a couple of information. I want you to tell the letter of rec writer what they should be writing about. So for example, let's say you took a class with this professor in your freshman year. You performed well, you did really well on one of the assignments, and the professor really liked your work. So what I want you to do is I want you to include that in the paragraph, the email, the contact, because what's going to happen, you know, these professors, they have hundreds of students every semester, every quarter. And so you want to remind the professor exactly what you did in their class and how you were able to attain information and, you know, complete good work. So I want you to explain in this email, in this face-to-face interaction, I want you to explain some of your accomplishments within that role in that class and what they should be writing about in their letter of recommendation. You want to give them reminders because obviously, like I mentioned earlier, they do have hundreds of students who may also be asking for letters of rec. So some of the things you want to remind them about is maybe some of the projects that you completed with within the class or with that professor. You also want to talk to them about some of your favorite topics within the class, especially if that topic is what you're going to be going to graduate school for. If you are asking an employer, for example, you might want to remind them of an initiative you started or something that you led within that internship, within that club, within that job. And so you want to remind them in detail of what you accomplished. So for example, if you, let's say, designed and facilitated a summer bridge program, for example. So you want to say like, remember when I designed this summer bridge program and I was able to recruit over 100 students to come to the program and it was a success. So you want to make sure that you are detailed. So for example, as you saw, I talked about numbers there. So you want to be detailed in your responses. That way they can be detailed too in their letter of recommendation. Another tip for this topic here is, let's say you face some challenges throughout your undergraduate career. What you could do is you can talk to this letter of rec writer as well in relation to this topic, because they can write that in their letter. Maybe you are first generation college student and you struggled with your classes, your first quarter, your first year, and you had a low GPA that ended up making your overall GPA suffer. So maybe you can tell and talk to the letter of rec writer about this situation, and they can write that in their letter, because sometimes on the overall graduate school application, they don't have a space for you to speak about this, or it doesn't fit in your statement of purpose. And so I want you to ask your letter, or tell your letter of rec writer some of the challenges you have faced and how that has maybe worked against your GPA or some of the challenges you faced. And so they can talk about those and shed some light on how you overcame these challenges and how, despite these challenges, you're still prepared for graduate school. The next thing that I want to talk about is what to provide your letter of rec writers. So I do have a list that I want to share with you that I tell all of my students and that I have done in the past as well. The first thing that I want to say is that you need to provide as much information as possible, because you want to make sure that the letter of rec writer has everything, all your records, everything that that you stand for, all your accomplishments, and so they can write a strong letter. So some of the things that you should provide are unofficial transcripts, a resume and CV, statement of purpose, writing sample, list of schools you are applying to with due dates. And then once you send that to them, I would suggest that you do it both in a physical form. So give them like a folder of all these documents, but also in an email. You also want to, in an email, you want to remind the letter of rec writer to write you a strong letter. You want to provide them with the due date, and you want to provide them with a link and description of why you're choosing this program, this institution. You also want to put in bold and underlined the due date, as well as any other topic you want them to emphasize in the letter. As the due date nears, you also want to provide some follow-up reminder emails, because these people do forget. They are busy people, and you want to make sure that they submit your letter on time. One experience that I had was with the fellowship. One of my letter rec writers didn't submit their letter, so I was disqualified from the competition, which kind of sucks, but it happens. And that's that I did send multiple reminders, it just didn't happen, and I don't want that to happen to you. So I want to make sure that you are able to, you know, follow up with them as many times as possible, but don't be too overbearing. Just, I would suggest that you submit a reminder email every month, and then once it's the month of the due date, then you want to submit a reminder email every week until they send it. On your application, after you input your letter of rec writer's information, so their name, their phone number, their email, and then you hit that request, they also ask you if you want to waive your rights. And I suggest that you do waive your rights, because that's going to show the committee members a couple of things, and it's also going to show your letter of rec writer a couple of things. So when you waive your rights, you're telling the committee, you're telling your letter of rec writer that you do not want to view your letter of recommendation. So in the United States, you are able, there's a rule, a law, that you are able to request your full application, and that includes letters of recommendations. And so when you waive your right, you're telling the committee, you're telling your letter of rec writer that this letter is a candid description of who you are. So the letter of rec writer is going to be more inclined to write a more candid letter of recommendation, because they know that you're not going to see it, and it's going to hold more weight than if you do not waive your rights. So I suggest that you do waive your rights when they ask you for this, because it's going to give you a stronger letter of recommendation in the eyes of both the writer and the committee. Finally, the last thing that I want to say is that you want to close the circle. So what does this mean? This means that once you heard back from your graduate school programs, your fellowships, the reason why you asked your letter of recommendation writers, you should be letting them know the outcome. So send them an email, send them a gift, send them a thank you letter, let them know what happened, because they are most likely supported people and on your side, and they want to know what you have accomplished. They want to know if they can help you out beyond the application process. So I want you to remind yourself to send them a thank you letter, send them a gift, send them an email thanking them for putting in the time to write you this letter. Especially if you're applying to multiple programs, they're using a lot of their time to help you out in your goals, and so I want you to make sure that you remind them, or I want to make sure that you tell them the outcome of your applications. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like and subscribe. I did start an Instagram page, so I want you to go follow that, because I want to interact with you more, and that's the best way for you to communicate with me. You can also reach me at my LinkedIn, which is attached to my YouTube channel. I hope you are more prepared for letters of recommendation, and I will see you in the next video.